Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Drunken Rancor. My name is Chase, and today I'm here with a guest.
Hey guys, I'm Will. How's it going?
And today, this is going to be less of a breakdown chapter and more of just a general discussion of Star Wars. So, Will, how did you get into Star Wars?
Well, so my earliest memory was, I think I was over at a cousin's house, and I couldn't have been more than, 6 or 7 years old, and I think they had episode 1 on, The Phantom Menace, and distinctively what I remember was the part where they're heading down to Otogunga, and they're going through, well, I guess they'd already been there, and so they're going through the Naboo's core, trying to get to the capital city. And I remember being freaked out because the part where the big sea monster comes up and chows down on the boat, and that was my first impression of Star Wars.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yes, there's always a bigger fish, and so between that and how hideous Jar Jar was, I was kind of turned off to it because of that, and plus like I was also kind of a little bit of a pansy as a 6 or 7 year old, so it didn't take much to scare me.
That's the only thing I remember about the Phantom Menace when it first came out. Was we took a trip down to Arbuckle Wilderness up in Arkansas or Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
It's the drive-through safari. And I remember sitting at a diner, talking with Chance, and I think we had a little Darth Maul toy, and we were discussing on which Jedi we thought could beat Darth Maul.
Right.
I don't remember any of the actual argument. I just remember sitting at a diner with the Darth Maul toy, talking with Chance on the way to Arbuckle Wilderness.
So I think honestly, whenever the real time that I got really into Star Wars, and I really started following it and watching movies and reading books and everything, I think I was probably about 10 or 11 years old, and I guess it was around the time that Revenge of the Sith came out, and I remember I think it was rated PG-13, and so my mom did not. I think my dad had to let me watch it off of a friend of his who had burned a DVD of it, and we went and watched it at his friend's house, and that was the first Star Wars movie I think I watched in entirety, and it was so intense that I was like, I didn't know what to think of Star Wars.
Yeah, my uncles used to have the 3 original on VHS, so I grew up being able to watch the 3 originals a lot.
So you were raised on the old school.
Yeah, I don't remember much of it because I was real little, and
right.
I mean, whenever I got to where I was old enough to actually start enjoying it was when the prequels started coming out.
Yeah.
I remember, if I remember right, the first time I watched the Clone Wars, the 2003 animated series,
Mm-hmm.
I think I was over at Dustin's.
Yeah. So that was, I don't think that I was in Star Wars, very into it whenever the 2003 Clone Wars came out. But I remember getting into it because I got one of the small Clone Wars Adventures comic books, which was set from the animated series. Yeah. And so that kind of piqued my interest. And then I think what really got me into Star Wars was collecting the action figures. And then I wanted to know the backstory behind the action figures, so then I wanted to go watch the movies.
I never got real big into collecting the action figures. I remember having the toy lightsabers some.
Right.
And then about from junior high through high school, I got real big into the Legends books.
Yeah.
And I would clean out Half Price Bookstore when I would go.
Well, hold on now. It's not Legends then. It was Expanded Universe at the time?
It was the Expanded Universe because I used to have nearly the entire New Jedi Order.
Yep.
The Swarm War, Legacy of the Force, all of them pre-Legends written. Yeah. But then they don't do well in a house fire.
Yeah. R.I.P. Yep. R.I.P. Lee House.
So I'm working on building that back up.
Yeah, so I think one of my first entrances into the Star Wars books was I think I actually had the novel of Episode 2 written by Salvatore.
Yeah, we had that one.
Yeah, and so that was probably the first Star Wars book I ever owned. And then I think really my peak Star Wars was in between Episode 3. So what that was 05, and then I think around 08. So around the time that Clone Wars came out, the Filoni's Clone Wars.
Yeah.
That is when I really got into Star Wars. And so I remember going and watching the movie with my mom and my dad and my little sister, and I was just so into it because that was really like the first good animated, like not to disrespect the 03 Clone Wars,
yeah.
but that was really the first like CGI, like more modern animated, and it was awesome.
Well, the 03 one it did a whole lot of the rule of cool of it really didn't matter if it fit lore, if it fit what the movies did. If it was cool, they would throw it on screen.
Right.
Comes to mind Mace Windu going karate on the entire droid army and just wrecking it.
Right. That was
like,
pretty epic.
If he can do that, what was that duel against Palpatine?
Right. So I think honestly, what's so cool, I think why the Clone Wars was so cool was that was like, you hear it mentioned in A New Hope, or Star Wars for my original listeners. But, it talks about the Clone Wars, it kind of a name drop, and then you never see anything about it. And then finally, 30 years later, then they finally crack that open, and then they just go full force into that storyline. And for me, that was just so cool because clone troopers, for whatever reason, are much more accurate than stormtroopers, so that was pretty cool. And then just seeing, I think the coolest part was that, and seeing all the different Jedi.
And the Thrawn book, Heir to the Empire, which I'm doing a breakdown on now, it was written pre the prequels.
Yeah.
So you get references to it of the mad clones, because George Lucas didn't tell them, hey, the clones are the good guys, they fought with the Jedi in the Clone Wars. So you get all these references of, because the main villain, he starts cloning people again in order to build up his army. And everybody's terrified that the clones are going to come back. They're going to try and take over the galaxy again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just a really neat contrast to what we know actually happens. There's a part in, I don't think it's Heir to the Empire, but it's one of the later books in the trilogy, when Han Solo mentions that Thrawn's using clones, and Lando just goes off on this rant about clones. They're subhuman monsters, and like, just this really racist rant about how bad clones are. And looking back at the Clone Wars series, it's like, man, that does not look good for Lando.
So my question is, in the timeline, Lando wasn't even, was he, I guess he was a child, during that time, because the Solo movie is set, how many years is it before the events? So you had,
I think Solo's like 5 or 6 years after Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, so 13 years before the Battle of Yavin?
Yeah, because I think, if I'm getting it right, I think Han is 10 years older than Luke and Leia.
Okay.
So, that means that, he would be 10 at the 9 or 10-ish during the Clone Wars.
And him and Lando, I'm assuming, are probably similar in age, I guess.
Yeah. So the only thing I can think of, if you wanted to make that fit into canon, is if Lando grew up on a Separatist world. I can't remember what his homeworld is right now.
Yeah.
And then he would have been fed all kinds of propaganda about how evil the clones were.
Right.
So,
here, let me fact check that real quick.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Lando Calrissian, his homeworld is Socorro.
I think that is
was a Separatist
world. So, I guess that would fit. That.
So he was born 31. So he was 31 at the Battle of Yavin. So that would mean that he was
Battle of
12, roughly 11 or 12.
Yeah, because
during the Clone Wars?
Or older, because if I'm thinking right, I think the Battle of Naboo is like 36. So that would 36 or
32, I believe.
32. So that would, yeah.
So he would be. So really, he's
10 years younger than Anakin.
Yeah. So he's 31. What's the quick math there? So he's what? 12. He's
11.
He's 11 years older than Luke and Leia.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was, early, almost adolescent years during the Clone Wars. So I guess if you grew up on a Separatist homeworld, then that would make sense.
Hearing about all the clones conquering people, because we know the Separatists are evil because they fight the Jedi in Star Wars.
Right.
But for like 90% of them, all they were is, the Republic was super corrupt at the time.
Right.
So they were just trying to get out of a corrupt system.
Right.
That the Jedi happened to be backing.
So it kind of like the Clone Wars episode where you have Mina and Lux Bonteri, and you see kind of that other side to the quote unquote good Separatists. I think that's a fair characterization.
Yeah, which that's in nearly every fighting force in the world. There are good people on both sides. They may not, because a lot of people who are fighting for the side may be backing them just because that's always been the side they're on.
Right.
They may not understand the full extent of which the war is.
So
it's kind of like at the end of World War II when there was just outrage among the German people when they found out about the Holocaust because they had to keep that such a secret.
Right. So I guess to get back on track a little bit, I guess probably how I got into Star Wars. I think honestly my biggest one of the biggest things that I take pride in was I probably spent all of my birthday and allowance money for a solid 3 or 4 years, and I would literally I would split it between Nerf guns and Star Wars action figures. So I have a pretty hearty collection of from the Clone Wars and whenever they came out with the Legacy collection of action figures. And then now I'm just a big kid. Even though I have a kid of my own, I still do a little bit of collecting on the side. So, so what about you? What was one of your big collecting items that you did Star Wars related?
Like I said, it was mainly the books, and as my dad can attest, we would go into half-price books, and I'd be like, "Oh, I've got $30," and then I'd go grab $35 or $40 worth of books, and be like, "Hey, Dad, can you spot me a 5 or 10?" I went a little over, and the way he tells it, that happened every time. I don't think it happened every time, but
you might be a little biased.
Yeah, that and the nerdiest thing I remember doing is I've always been big on world building. Like I said, I'm trying to write my own book series, and that's one thing I love about Star Wars is the world building is so deep, and you can dive into these characters that in any other story would have just been a background character, and they've got these full lives nearly mapped out. Well, at our old house, we had dial-up. So I used to go on, sit there, ring up dial-up, go on Wikipedia, and I was real big on, I love like ships and planning out fleets and stuff. And I used to have a binder, all the different ship types. And one thing I used to do is I used to pick out, like, if for some reason Earth got invaded, but we had access to Star Wars ships and I was in charge, how would I plan out my fleet? And not only would I plan out my fleet, because I didn't just stick random commanders and stuff or just pretend like I had people working for me. I would actually try and pinpoint, like, I know such and such from school. I wonder what ship they would do good in.
Right.
And I would plan out, like, if our school had to just go up in ships and fight off the Empire.
Man, that's a pretty interesting fantasy there.
Yeah, like I said, it was dial-up was about all we had. We didn't have a whole lot of video games, so I got bored a lot.
Shout out Deep East Texas.
Yep. I still don't know if there's high-speed internet in that area.
So you think we should get into our ki-Adi-Mundi slander?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's about time he got knocked down a peg.
Alright.
So, you're the one who pointed this out to me, the fact that ki-Adi-Mundi single-handedly brought about the destruction of the Jedi Order, created Vader, and brought about the rise of the Empire.
So, okay, disclaimer, I was not the originator of this theory, but I figured that, between me and you, we could add some meat on the bones of the rough argument that I'd seen on probably some Reddit thread or something like that. But, basically it spans from ki-Adi-Mundi's childhood past all the way until the events of like episode 3. I think Chase, you had quite a bit of research to support this theory.
Yeah, I mean, I found a lot of parallels between him and Anakin. Like the fact that he was brought into the Jedi Order at the age of 4. So, significantly older than most of the infants they would usually bring in.
So I guess most of the infants, I guess, that they brought into the Order were probably like 6 months old or something, I guess.
Yeah. There's actually a comic about that of Mace Windu is sent to find one of these infants, and he goes and gets it, and it kind of shows a darker side to the Jedi because the parents are literally on their knees begging him not to take their child, and he's just kind of like, he's going to the Jedi Order, it's for the greater good, giving the regular Jedi spiel, but it's like, no, the Jedi are forcibly taking, because it's stated that if you don't want to give your kid to the Jedi, you don't have to, but it's kind of one of those implied things of you will be shunned by society. Like, most people see having more Jedi as a good thing.
Right.
So you're kind of looking like you're being selfish and not helping the rest of the galaxy.
So it's kind of funny that you point this out because, like, obviously, like in the Clone Wars, there's the Cad Bane arc. I believe it's season 2 where he's posing as a Jedi and he's stealing the children for Darth Sidious. But it's always seems like the parents they portray the parents of these children to be like so willing to give them up as, you know.
And I'm sure there was a lot of them that were, because, like I said, it was seen as an honor. But then again, I mean, you just have a kid. Could you imagine a church showing up and being like, "Oh, he will be the next pope"?
Yeah.
But we're going to take him away, and you're never going to see him again.
Yeah. That would be that. As it stands right now, that'd probably be a hard no.
Yeah, that's it's very. I don't see many people complying, but then again, the Jedi have been around for tens of thousands of years, or I say that it's probably more like just thousands, but it's the social norm. Like, if your kid has it, then they go become a Jedi.
Yeah. Probably more of an old world culture, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
But, so I thought one thing that I guess kind of in the early years is one thing that you had brought to my attention was that ki-Adi-Mundi was one of the Jedi who was more voiced his opinion more, like in the events we see in episode 1, where he thinks that Anakin is too old. But then you're telling me, that he was actually kind of older, because I think Anakin was, 9 years old?
Yeah, Anakin was nearly double the age of ki-Adi-Mundi, but ki-Adi-Mundi was still brought in old.
Right. So it's kind of like when you can compare and contrast those things, you kind of start to see that he's not so much a man of principle.
That being said, it could also be because he struggled a lot in his early years, and he was arrogant, and he went back and against the wishes of Yoda to fight for his family. So he could just be looking back and be like, I struggled so much, I had so much trouble, and this kid's older than I was, he's going to have even more trouble. So he could be going off of experience.
Sure. Instead of, I don't know, to me you would think that maybe for the for the greater good. And this is kind of a side point that I'd get into later in some of the stuff that I've researched. But like, you would think that if he was, he's one of the high masters of the order, you would think that he would have like the forethought through the Force to know that Anakin, like, they're sitting here and this kid has this high midichlorian count and he's like just toe to toe, answering these questions from Mace and Yoda and all them, with the Force. And you would think that instead of shunning him and trying to turn him away from the order, that he would try to just take him under his wing and maybe mentor him, since he has the similarities. But it's the opposite. He just wants to like shun the kid and put him back out into society, which I would think would be worse.
And it's funny you said that about mentoring him, because in one of the comics, I think it's on the Battle of Jabim, they believe Obi-Wan's killed because he goes inside of an AT-AT. It's the first time they use them, and it blows up. And he gets captured by Ventress, but everybody believes that Obi-Wan died. So Ki-Adi-Mundi is the one who is picked to train Anakin. And it's at that point you learn that Ki-Adi-Mundi is probably sociopath, because Anakin is sad because Obi-Wan just died, and Obi-Wan's like the closest thing he has to family.
Right.
And Ki-Adi-Mundi's reply is, "My home planet got attacked. My 5 wives and 7 daughters were murdered, and it doesn't bother me. So suck it up. It shouldn't bother you that your master's dead."
So I want to touch on that. I find it so weird. And of course, you can get into the different cultural things in Star Wars. But one of the biggest contributing factors to why you have a Darth Vader in the fall of the Jedi Order is the quote-unquote forbidden love that the Order kind of sets up, that you're not allowed to have attachments, but yet, Ki-Adi-Mundi has, what'd you say, 5 wives?
Yep.
And so it's just so odd to me that this dude is literally such a walking contradiction. And
yeah, there's a lot of parallels between him and Anakin. Anakin was told no, but Ki-Adi-Mundi did it anyways, or they're just really similar in one way or the other.
Right.
That being said, as I said in that quote, apparently attachment didn't matter because he didn't care at all that they just got murdered.
Yeah. Well, I guess he had to care some, right? Because you said that whenever he was younger, he went and fought for his family, so I guess there was some level of attachment there.
Yeah, he went and fought for his parents because the planet he's on, they had a lot of raiders and a lot of nomads on the planet. Well, their farm got raided every year. Well, they sent him off to be a Jedi, and then he came back, and the raiders, they were raiding his farm. Well, he said he came back to his family, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll deal with it." He walks out to the raiders' camp and goes, "Look, I'm a Jedi. You guys stand no chance against me. I won't even use my lightsaber against y'all. In fact, I'll even I think he keeps one arm behind his back, or both arms behind his back or something." And he's like, "And I will just beat y'all, send y'all on your way." And he proceeds to get the crap kicked out of him. They just beat him to a pulp.
So you're telling me that if you moved that setting to Tatooine with the sand, and may or may not the Raiders took his mother, then you may or may not have the same exact story of Anakin Skywalker?
The only difference is Anakin wasn't arrogant enough to be like, "Hey, I'm not going to use my arms in my fight against you highly trained Raiders because I'm a Jedi." No, Anakin just whipped out his lightsaber and went to town.
Yeah, except, well, he maybe got too much confidence from slaying the Tusken Raiders to where he ended up losing his arm against Count Dooku later in the movie.
Yeah.
So, I guess moral of the story is, even if you're a Jedi, don't think too highly of yourself.
Yeah, the Force is good, but the Force also seems to lead people to their own destruction.
Yeah, I think that's where you kind of gotta have your your perfect, middle ground there in between light and dark. One thing whenever I was doing some research that I thought was pretty funny, kind of adding to our theory here, is it's almost like Ki-Adi-Mundi was almost running cover, or like he's just so like blind to what's actually going on that whenever Senator Amidala was trying to explain that she was the target of an assassination attempt, he was like, "Oh no, it couldn't be Dooku. He's just a political idealist. He would never do that." And then, they proceed to fight an entire war against Dooku, but, just a political idealist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most people who lead to massive revolutions are political idealists. So, if someone being a political idealist does not mean they're not a threat. Quite the contrary. You should probably keep an eye out on them.
And then, so my kind of side theory is that, well, I have two thoughts aside from this. Is one, this could be controversial, but I think most people would agree with me that I think as a High Master in the Jedi Order, he's probably one of the most useless Jedi. And also, I don't know how he has a seat on the High Council because he seems to be completely just not with the Force as far as being sensitive to foreseeing things and sensing things, because for instance, when they went back to Geonosis the second time, the landing at Point Rain arc in the Clone Wars series, they ended up, spoiler alert, even though it's been 10 years since this came out for you listening, they take Poggle the Lesser into Republic custody, and then they take him back, and then there's the whole brain worm infestation, and then and then Anakin starts. Ki-Adi-Mundi and Luminar Unduli try to interrogate Poggle, and they get nowhere. And then Anakin goes in there and goes Dirty Harry on him and threatens him within an inch of his life, and basically force chokes the crap out of him. And then he finally starts talking, and then somehow Ki-Adi-Mundi has no idea. He's just like, "Oh, how'd you get him to talk?" And then Anakin's doesn't really give him much of an indication. And then Ki-Adi-Mundi's just like, "Okay, makes sense." Just has no awareness of the fact that Anakin probably got dangerously close to the dark side.
Either that, or there's also the theory that the Jedi knew Anakin was getting dark and that he was doing a lot of things he wasn't supposed to be, but it was just general knowledge that you ignore it.
He was kind of like a neutral chaos.
Yeah, because, I mean, nearly everyone knew that he was real close with Senator Amidala.
Right.
They may not have known how close, but it's also stated multiple times that Jedi can sense when someone's pregnant.
Right.
So,
how can you not put two and two together?
Yeah. But then again, if you're raised to never, they would also not have the social clues 99% of the people on Earth would.
Fair.
About relationships or anything like that.
So then another thing that I thought was interesting was going into the fact that I don't think Ki-Adi-Mundi has much Force perception, is the fact that in episode 1 he's like, "Oh no, the Sith have been extinct for a millennia or whatever," and then he just completely brushed it under, and then it's it takes Qui-Gon Jinn being impaled with a lightsaber and dying and all of that to be like, "Oh, I guess they are kind of legit." Huh.
Yeah, and it's a little off topic, but that makes me wonder about this new High Republic series they're coming out with, because you can't use Sith in it, so that's going to be an interesting way on how they handle it, because this is in the 1,000 years when no one sees a Sith.
Oh, okay.
So if you do bring Sith in, you got to be very careful, and they cannot reveal themselves in any way.
Because this is before the Sith Wars.
Yeah.
Or this is after the Sith Wars, but before.
But before the
prequels.
Prequels. So this is the 1,000-year golden age of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna be interested to see how they handle that.
Probably see a lot more pirates and smugglers.
Yeah.
I know I bought my son a book, and it's a lot of I think, was it the Hyperspace Wars?
Yeah, the Stark Hyperspace Wars.
Yeah, I think it might touch a little bit into that, it has a lot more of like you see. I know in this little book that I bought him and I was reading it to him that they touch a lot more on like Jedi consulars and then you have your Jedi like the more warrior types and then your like the more healing, the more Jedi medics or whatever so have you, and then the pilots and things like that. So maybe you'll get to see the different types of Jedi that they don't really touch on too much.
Yeah, because that's about the only thing the Clone Wars kind of set apart is you only follow the important Jedi.
Right.
And, I mean, technically they should be leagues and bounds ahead of the normal Jedi, so to speak.
Right.
So, it'd be interesting to see a series that showed the normal Jedi and showed what an average Jedi is supposed to be able
like
to
do. Like a Jocasta Nu or
yeah.
somebody who works in the archives or maybe just is like a medic maybe that oversees, or even kind of like a Shakti where she oversees the clone training on Kamino.
Yeah, or I think it was the old Battlefront 2. They had two classes. They had the Jedi Brute, which were just like Gamorreans that were changed as Jedi.
Right.
And their lightsabers are so big they just look like clubs.
Or what is it that Dex is? What's his species?
Oh, the Basilisk?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That they had like a palm krell,
yeah.
And,
or they also had the Jedi snipers, which you would think, I mean, the Force allows you to predict movement and everything. So you give a Jedi a rifle, they would be super effective snipers.
Well, don't we see that whenever Obi-Wan fakes his death and he tries to uncover that plot in the Clone Wars?
But that's not what the Jedi snipers were. No, they threw their lightsabers and manipulated it to fight with at a distance.
So it's like 360 tomahawk?
Yeah. It's just like the Jedi could be so more effective if they weren't just super trapped in tradition.
Right.
And the Sith aren't any better.
Yeah. Yeah, so another thing that I found was if you look at the Mandalore arc, and so Ki-Adi-Mundi has this odd, he goes and in his, when you delve into his history, he's super willing to go fight his own battles. But whenever it comes to fighting other people's battles, then for some odd reason, he's super standoffish. So you see that with Kashyyyk, you see it with the Mandalore arc, where he's like, oh, we shouldn't go, it's super more pacifist almost, even though you're kind of a general in the middle of a war.
Well, he was for going for Kashyyyk.
I thought he was one of the ones that he didn't want to send Yoda extra help.
No, because his whole deal was, instead of discussing more about why Palpatine wanted Anakin on the Jedi Council and anything like that, he immediately changed the subject about what about the Wookiees on Kashyyyk? They need help.
Okay, I must have my memory kind of.
That being said, he's also the reason that Yoda wasn't on Coruscant when it came to confronting Palpatine.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure Yoda and Mace together could have took him.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, Mace essentially beat him on his own.
Although that is pretty crazy. Like, if you think about it, you had 4, kind of sidetracking here a little bit, you had 4 Jedi Masters, because you see how tough, like, in the Clone Wars series and, like, the little side things outside of, like, just the main movies, you see that Saesee Tiin is pretty adept with the Force, and Kit Fisto. We don't know. One thing I found interesting also was, like, you don't see a lot of Agent Kolar. He's just kind of like, oh, here's just this random high master in the Jedi Order, and then he's in this movie for 5 minutes. But, like, you would think, like, even against a Sith Lord, like, they wouldn't just get instantly carved up.
Yeah, they kind of tried to work that into the later stuff, because they would have them work together a lot. But, like, Saesee Tiin, he was the best star pilot in the Jedi Order until Anakin came around, and his big thing was he was big on flying and piloting stuff.
Yeah.
Kit Fisto, they talked about a lot, and they actually show it in the Clone Wars. The fact that he goes toe to toe with General Grievous, with no problem.
He seems to be a pretty good swordsman,
but he loses to Ventress. He gets driven back by Ventress, but they imply it in the fact that his fighting style is that he is super good against multiple opponents. He's not good at one-on-one. Well, Grievous fighting style is basically like you're fighting 4 people at one time. So he can hold his own against Grievous because he's good at managing
multiple angles, maybe, of attack.
I don't know. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. If you're capable of managing multiple people, you should be able to beat one-on-one. But that was one of the things I found researching that it talked about a lot, was the fact that one-on-one Kit Fisto was not that great. Against multiple people is where he excelled.
Huh. So when did he encounter Ventress?
I don't know. I don't remember it, and it may have been in a book or something.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
it's in one of the isn't he in the Cestus Deception in the old novels that they wrote for the original Clone Wars series? Maybe it's then.
Maybe. I didn't get a bunch of the old Clone Wars novels. My main focus was after.
Gotcha. And then another thing I found interesting was going back to Ki-Adi-Mundi and him, the Mandalore arc, is his concern with intervening with Mandalore was that it'd be seen as an act of war. But my question was going against war with who? Because did they not already know that it was kind of a separatist involvement there in Mandalore? So who are you you're already at war with them. Who are you gonna start a war with?
I think it was because Mandalore was so vocal about being neutral.
Yeah.
That they were worried it would push all the other neutral systems into being into looking at that and being like, well, they invaded Mandalore even though Mandalore wasn't officially part of the war. Who's to say they're not going to make up some justification to invade me? I might as well side with the separatists and get infrastructure.
That's fair.
And stuff on the ground already.
That's fair. So another thing was you get into the whole arc where that decides Ahsoka's fate within the Jedi Order, and this is also going back to my idea. I don't think Ki-Adi-Mundi is the most force sensitive Jedi that there is. Even though you would think, being a high master on the council, that he would have that kind of figured out, is so if you recall, they have to, when the bombs go off in the temple and the clones and a couple Jedi are killed, they have to recall Anakin and Ahsoka from Ki-Adi-Mundi, which I believe is an Outer Rim territory, and then somehow they are Ahsoka was the one that did all of this. Instead of thinking that maybe somebody who was at the temple at the time, you would think that they would be able to trace a recording, or that you would be able to use the Force to determine if somebody's being truthful or not.
Yeah, the Jedi are not the best at investigating. I mean, this is the same group of people that Count Dooku said, hey, my master, the Sith Lord, is running the Senate in Episode 2.
This is true.
And you would think, considering you can just do a metachlorian test to find out if someone's force sensitive, you would think that'd be standard for anywheres. The possibility of having the power to manipulate someone's mind, maybe we should find out if any politicians have that ability.
Yeah.
I mean, the bare minimum, I don't know if you'd want to bar them from being in politics, but bare minimum have a necklace on that says, I can possibly control minds, and if there's any swing votes that just happen to sway their way where politicians act out of character, you might want to do an investigation.
Right. I don't know. I just feel between that and his own him being a walking contradiction, the guy is completely nonchalant about the Sith. He totally, he lets Yoda go away and which ends up leading to the event that takes place, in the Senate building, and then Anakin becomes Darth Vader, and I don't know. I think Ki-Adi-Mundi is just. I don't think he's a Sith, affiliated with the Sith secretly or has any dark streaks, but I think that he's just a completely incompetent Jedi master.
Well, he also thought Yoda had been deceived by the dark side whenever Qui-Gon tried to contact Yoda in that arc. It said that he didn't believe it was possible to come back from the dead like that, and he thought it was the dark side playing a trick on Yoda, and that Yoda, he lost a lot of his respect and basically trust in Yoda whenever Yoda took it seriously.
So, the one thing that comes to my mind whenever you say he didn't believe, Qui-Gon was back. So, in Episode 2, when Anakin is slaying the Tusken Raiders, you hear Qui-Gon's voice saying, "No, Anakin, no." Did anybody sense that in the Force? Or did even Anakin sense that in the Force? Or is that just kind of a random little thing that George Lucas stuck in there?
I think it was meant for us to know that, Qui-Gon is watching.
Yeah.
But, I don't think any of the Jedi really sensed it.
Yeah, because that was the only thing that came up. I was like, well, because didn't Yoda sense that in the Force whenever Anakin slayed the Tusken Raiders, did he not?
Yeah, and that being said, that may have been what he sensed, because I don't think Yoda would have had the connection to Anakin or the connection to the Tusken Raiders to sense that. I mean, the Jedi aren't constantly sensing every time someone's killed across the galaxy.
Right.
So he may have sensed Qui-Gon's pain at seeing Anakin falling.
Interesting. That's an interesting take. Well, I think we've made a pretty good case.
Before that, I do want to point out one thing.
Oh, yeah?
Did you ever read, the legacy comics that are, 200 years after A New Hope?
With Cade Skywalker?
Yeah.
No, I kind of followed it and read into it a little bit, but I didn't get super into it.
Darth Krayt, the main Sith Lord who conquers basically the whole galaxy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Shard Het. That was Ki-Adi-Mundi's apprentice.
Interesting.
Yeah, he trains what becomes one of, if not the most single most powerful Sith Lord ever. One that basically, I think by the end of it, he does figure out how immortality works, where he could have conquered the galaxy and lived forever, but Cad Skywalker manages to trick him onto a ship, weaken him enough that he can't escape, and launch it into the sun.
Nice.
Yeah, but so Ki-Adi-Mundi also nearly trained the person that single-handedly, well, he did commit a Jedi purge and wipe out the 99% of the Jedi Order.
Yeah, sounds like Ki-Adi-Mundi doesn't have the best track record when you look at it from standing back a little bit.
Nope, not at all.
Okay, so this is kind of a question I came up with to ask you, and then I would want to give a little bit of my input. But all right, so my question is, if you were in control of Lucasfilm at circa, I guess not really 2010, but 2008, 2010, just shortly after, obviously, Episode 3 concludes and the prequel trilogy concludes, where would you have taken the franchise?
Honestly, I would have done. Well, it would depend if I had Disney's resources like they have now. Then I would have taken it very similar to Marvel. I would have based it off of the Legends series. I don't know how exactly it'd work actor-wise, because Mark Hamill and them would have been too old to play Luke and Leia immediately post Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But I'm going to skip over acting choices. But I would have done Phase 1. I would have started at the Truce at Bakra, which I don't know if you ever read it. It was
I'm somewhat knowledgeable.
I am too. I just bought it. I haven't actually read it yet. This is last time I was there was the first time I got it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard enough about it to know it's a fan favorite that it would have done good.
Yeah.
And I would like to have started at the Thrawn trilogy because that's the big trilogy that kicked off the Legends. But they went back and did so much stuff between the Thrawn trilogy and them that I wouldn't want to just skip out on.
So you mean to say that you would have, kept the plus or minus 30 years of writing and lore that followed, the 80s with Return of the Jedi, and you wouldn't have just completely kicked it out the door and made it non-canon and made your own sequel trilogy?
Pretty much, yeah.
Not that I have a bone to pick, with the sequel trilogy. Just kidding, I do.
Yeah. There's some new content that's good. The main thing, as conjointed as the expanded universe was, and I mean, there was things you looking at that was just out there.
Sure.
But the sequel trilogy, to me, it just didn't have a flow like... It
No.
felt like 3 separate movies, not a trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, it presents you with interesting characters, and but it's just too cookie cutter. And the expanded universe, it was I mean, let's be honest. The Force Awakens is a modern take on A New Hope, and then everything is just. It's almost like there's a Star Wars trilogy mold, and they just put different characters on it. And then for some reason, they thought it was a great idea to kill off every single character that made the original trilogy great.
That being said, I can see why they did that, just because it was an actor thing. Han Solo or Harrison Ford, he wanted Han to die in Return of the Jedi. He didn't. He thought Han's arc was done. He thought Han should have died in that movie. Mark Hamill, I don't think he was going to come back for any length of time. And Carrie Fisher passed away. And people got mad if they killed him. People would have been just as mad if they recast them. They really didn't have anything. They really didn't have a good option to use those characters.
So I would agree with you until, spoiler alert, we see what they do in The Mandalorian with Luke, and to me that kind of makes the point moot.
Yeah.
Because then they could have just CGI. I mean, let's be honest, that was a pretty convincing Luke.
That being said, I did get some of the whole Uncanny Valley thing where it's fake.
Yeah.
So it kind of puts you off a little.
But
I thought it was realistic looking, but it was one of those while looking at it, I'm like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, but
yeah.
At least you have the original character,
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, if we were starting further back,
yeah, I guess the main thing would have been is if they were going to do, a sequel trilogy, they would have really had to turn around, and instead of doing prequels.
Yeah, it might have been better to do the sequel first, and then the prequel, because the sequel is heavily influenced on what George Lucas originally intended. I think they did a lot of twists and turns for it because, and changed a few things, but
kind of creating plot holes, like why did nobody else think to hyperspace a ship through the middle of another ship, or Jedi being sucked out into the ether of space and then not asphyxiating and using the Force to pull themselves back into a bridge.
Well, that didn't bother me as much because realistically, like looking at actual science, you can survive a minute of hard vacuum in space and not die. So if you were powerful enough to just pull yourself back in, physically you could do it.
But it's not so much the the ability to, but it's like, why of all characters does Leia, who, I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I mean, and like I said, in this deal I'm working on, Leia is, she does become that powerful by the end of the expanded universe.
Is it the Skywalker blood?
I don't know about that. It's the slowest burn ever because I think she starts her training in the Thrawn trilogy, but she doesn't become an actual Jedi of any merit until the Swarm War, which is like 50 books later. So it's one of the slowest burns in all of fiction.
So you said that you'd start phase 1 with Truce at Bakura, and then
and then I would go into the X-Wing series, but I would adapt it into a TV series, kind of like they're doing with WandaVision or the new Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
So is that, when you say X-Wing Squadron, is that similar to Rogue Squadron? Because they seem to be coming out with it.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in how they're going to do that because the X-Wing series, I mean, the first book is Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
It's Wedge putting together Rogue Squadron so that he can fight the Empire. And then it moves through, and it's basically a book series that follows them that takes place shortly after the Truce of Bakura and leads all the way up to, well, there's actually some of the series takes place after, during like the Legacy of the Force era. Like the actual book series takes place over like 30 years in Star Wars. So theoretically, you could have this X-Wing series running for the rest of the Star Wars movie universe that I've got mapped out here. That being said, I would say the movie for the Taking of Coruscant. I would have the series lead up to it, and then I would have release a movie for the Taking of Coruscant. That being said, I'm kind of hesitant on putting that in concrete because I want to see how Marvel handles it, having movie series that directly link into movies,
right,
and seeing how successful that works because like 80% of your fans are going to be mainly movie watchers. They're not going to consume every aspect of your work. So relying on information that you're only going to get in the movies or you're only going to get in the TV series, and having that in the movie is going to leave a lot of people confused.
So do you have in your theoretical your phases, do you fit the Yuzan Vong Wars or the anything like that into the fiction?
Phase 3 is the Yuzan Vong War.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like that to me, I feel like instead of recycling Palpatine, I feel like that would have been something that they could have fit into the sequel trilogy, and that would have given them a chance to kill off. You could have maybe rewritten it a little bit instead of just Chewbacca dying. You could have written Han in there to die, and whoever. And then on top of that, like, also why did they rewrite? Why did they choose to rewrite the children and the names that Han and Leia had instead of just going with what they had and then maybe just changing the canon a little bit instead of just wiping those characters out completely?
That, and also the thing with the Return of Palpatine, is literally the Dark Empire comics. If you take out all the cool factors of the Dark Empire comics, because the Dark Empire comic, Palpatine comes back as a clone. He's got a hidden planet. But they removed him sending out world devastators. They removed Luke going evil in order to beat them. Like, Luke voluntarily goes evil, thinking that I can't beat Palpatine one-on-one, but if I go in, I gain his trust, I can figure out how to take out this massive army.
Almost like an Emperor's hand type of thing?
Yeah. I can figure out how to take it out, I can pretend to be the next Vader, and then I can shut it down from the inside and allow the New Republic to come in and beat it. Why didn't they recycle that with Kylo? That would have been an amazing thing, especially if you'd had that was how it originated. Ben voluntarily went to the Emperor because Luke knew he couldn't beat it.
Well, it sounds like instead of the World Devastators, when they wrote the Mandalorian, they recycled it with what's the operation that the criminal that Bill Burr plays, and
Operation Cinder.
Yeah, so it sounds like they just recycled it into almost like a Death Star-esque type of thing, but it sounds like it accomplishes the same end goal, which is to destroy planets.
Yeah, the only cool thing about the World Devastator was that it was literally a mobile factory.
Yeah.
So it would rip like metal buildings from the ground, throw it into a forge, run it through a conveyor belt, and then spit out automated TIE fighters and droids out the other side. So it was literally making an army as it destroyed your ships and your people.
See, I wonder if it's like the precursor to it is like in going back to the Clone Wars, the I don't even know what that ship is called. It's the one where Mace Windu's on Dantooine fighting the army like mano a mano, and it's basically like a
giant
big
hammer.
Yeah, basically like a big jackhammer that just like hits like the mantle of the planet and sends a gigantic earthquake. I don't know what that ship is called. I don't know that it was ever named, but I feel like that was a precursor.
I'm sure it's named, but I don't remember it. But yeah, getting back to my deal, I would have done the X-Wing series. I would have finished off with the Courtship of Princess Leia movie, which is where Han and Leia get married, and it's actually the defeat of Warlord Zinji, which is would have been one of the main villains in the X-Wing series. The funny thing is the book comes out before the X-Wing series, so you see him die, and then you get the series where he's the big bad. And it's Han Solo is actually an acting general in that series, so you actually see him in command of I think it's called the Mon Ramonda, a Mon Calamari warship, and he goes toe to toe with Zinji several times. Zinji has the Iron Fist and an Executor class Superstar Destroyer. And they kind of play cat and mouse for a long time, and then they get Zinji over the planet of Dathomir.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then I would have finished the Phase 1 out with the Thrawn trilogy.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
I hope that they delve into Thrawn a little bit here with between the Mandalorian, because that seems to be where it's inching by. Also, side note, I was pretty impressed that the Mandalorian was able to squeeze in Boba Fett, Dark Troopers, and Bib Fortuna in like one or two episodes there at the end to just kind of coalesce the entire, like, some of the old canon stuff, or expanded universe, I should say.
That being said, they missed one of my theories when I was watching the Mandalorian on the Dark Trooper, and that's because one of the Dark Troopers, one of the phases of Dark Trooper, was basically a giant mech suit that you wore.
Yeah.
And I was thinking at the end, Mando was going to go up against Gideon, and Gideon was just going to step out in a mech suit.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a one-on-one fight where Mando's going up against the mech suit.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like they kind of put their own twist on it. I didn't really see some of that coming, but I did think it was kind of a nice little fan service thing that they put some of the expanded universe stuff in there.
And as successful as that is, and with Disney bringing the Clone War, the 2003 Clone Wars back on Disney Plus, I'm wondering if we're going to see a return, if they're going to start blending that in a lot more.
Well, I think if you give Dave Filoni more reins, I think between him and Jon Favreau, I think they'll do the series right by George. But the current head honcho over there with Lucasfilm, she who must not be named, she hasn't been the most effectively run or written story.
Yeah. That being said, when the prequels came out, they were not exactly the best received.
I mean, this is true.
It's one of those. Right now, it looks like there's a lot of hate on the sequel trilogy. Depending on how the next trilogy comes, I mean, there was a lot of hate on the prequel trilogy, and now they're looked back real fondly.
Yeah.
But a lot of that has to do with, like, we grew up with the prequels. This is something new. This is something, they're taking something we really care about and enjoy.
Yeah.
And they're changing it.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for original fans with the prequel.
Right.
By the time they come out with a new series, people will have grown up on this
sequel trilogy.
On the sequel trilogy as that being what Star Wars is to them. And I'm sure those fans that love it are going to be just as annoyed.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair take, honestly.
Yeah, it's one of those. I love it. Like I've said, I've got this whole thing planned out on how I would love to see Legends handled. And I mean, anybody at Disney listening, you can still do this. You could do an animated Legends series.
You would not hear any complaints from, I think, 95% of Star Wars fans.
Yeah, because even the big sequel fans, as long as you just named it Legends and like maybe only released it on Disney Plus, you're not going to get any problems, and you're doubling your money.
Oh yeah, for sure. You would definitely keep me reined in. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I had that, and it finished off at the Thrawn trilogy. Well, the Thrawn trilogy is a following that would be Phase 2, which starts with the Jedi Academy trilogy. So this starts with Luke creating his Jedi Academy. You get iJedi, where Corran Horn, which would have been one of the main fans of main characters in the X-Wing series, realizes he's a Jedi, and he becomes a Jedi. So you would have had a character that's been built up over this entire series, stepping forwards. You'd have the Black Fleet Crisis, which honestly isn't the biggest story, but it would make for a bunch of really cool space battles, because it's basically these. I think they're the Yavantha. They're an alien species from the unknown regions that had partnered with the Empire. The Empire had basically been using them as slaves to build ships. Well, when the Empire fell, they revolted and took over. Well, seeing as the only non-Yavantha they've ever met was the Empire that immediately enslaved them, they are crazy xenophobic. But they also have the blueprints for all the starships. So they amassed this massive fleet, and they've got super Star Destroyers and everything. And they just launch a massive attack on the New Republic. So it would be a really cool space battle-oriented series, or movies where you have the ships clashing. You got the Dark Forces. Oh, the Dark Forces, I put that in as one of the anthology films. Because that does take place, I think some of it takes place before A New Hope happens. But it would be introducing Kyle Katarn, which is a big fan favorite.
Right. Your 90s kids would really take a shine to that. Well, I guess some of your 80s as well, because the Dark Forces game for early 90s, I guess?
I think so. I remember we used to have it on our old PC.
Yeah.
But, and that being an anthology film, you can throw that in anywhere.
Really, yeah. I think Disney would do great instead of just trying to create more trilogies. I think if you just started making standalone movies, because honestly, in my opinion, one of the greatest Star Wars movies in the last 10 years was Rogue One. It was a standalone film that just kind of filled in kind of a hole for your casual to mid-tier Star Wars fan, and it was a good movie.
And honestly, I didn't have much of a problem with Solo.
Yeah, Solo ended up being a pretty good movie.
I know it got a lot of flack, but it was also one that, if you look at an off-screen not looking in the Star Wars universe, looking in real life,
Yeah.
it was kind of set up for failure because it was released in the original, I think it was March timeline, whereas previously Disney had been moving to the Christmas timeline, which gets you more views in theaters. Well, supposedly, and this may be completely wrong, there was some but there's some debate on whether they should keep doing Star Wars movies and releasing them in March, because that's when the originals and the prequel were released. And Disney said, well, it'll depend on how Solo does. Well, Solo, if you look at it, it didn't get the marketing rundown that all the other episodes got.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like they were like, well, we'll see how this does, but we really don't want to. We need justification to move the dates. So we're just going to let this one fizzle out.
See, so if you wanted my take on it, now that I've had enough time to sit and think about it, I think that if you started making like they could be legends or whatever, however you want to do it, but if you made like a Mace Windu movie, I think that would do really well. I think or like an Origins film, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to see Mace come back. I don't see that happening.
I just don't see how it fits in the grand scheme of things.
Mainly because Mace isn't like Yoda or Obi-Wan that can be like, all right, I couldn't beat him one-on-one. Like I don't have the strength, so I'm gonna wait so I can train the next person who has strength to beat him. Mace, as soon as he would have woke up, he would have marched right back up that tower.
For sure.
Or as soon as he recovered enough and got robotic hands, he would have marched right back up that tower and went toe to toe with Palpatine again.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you did some Origins movies for some of those powerful Jedi, I wonder if the new trilogy that they're planning will kind of be kind of like as subtext, kind of a Yoda Origins, because that would have been like around the time that Yoda comes onto the scene. I think Mace Windu would be pretty cool, or maybe just kind of like a Clone Wars Adventures on but a live action that would be pretty well received.
Yeah, if you did like a 501st movie or series.
That would be
live action would be hard to do because it's one person. But I mean, if everybody had helmets on, But you model it like Band of Brothers.
Yeah, that would and that would be. I would watch that like nonstop. I think that would be really good. Hopefully we see that with the Bad Batch coming out here May the 4th.
That being said, I think Bad Batch is going to go more A-Team style.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I like the little Bad Batch arc in Season 7 of Clone Wars. That was pretty nice.
I hope they flesh out the characters a little more, because that did start getting to me of like, okay, I know you're the stereotypical big guy, but add a little more substance than just, hey, I'm the big guy from the movies. Or I'm Rambo or something.
Yeah.
So as long as and I mean, if you're doing a full series, you're going to flesh the characters out more.
Yeah. I would honestly, if Bad Batch goes well, I think it would be in Disney's best interest, or Disney/Marvel's best interest, to make a Clone Commando series or Republic Commando series. I think
they're looking at I think they're redoing the games, and I don't know if they're just doing better graphics, like upgrading the graphics,
like remastering it.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. I thought and then I went blank. But I don't know if they're just remastering it so the graphics are better and you can play it on newer consoles, or if they're going all the way to
kind of giving it a facelift and
if they're redoing the entire game.
Yeah. I think I don't know, the hardcore Star Wars fans I think would really appreciate something like that.
And it's kind of like everybody wants KOTOR 3 or Knights of the Republic 3. I do and I don't. I would love to see the game again. That being said, everybody says get BioWare to do it again. That is not the same company.
Yeah.
It's been so many years. They've gone through so many different.
It's been
people.
what, 20 years?
Yeah. So that's not. You're not going to get the same people who worked on it to work on it again.
I mean, shoot, probably half of those people are retired by now.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Mass Effect, the first ones, the ones they're doing now, there's quite a bit of difference in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think some of that old stuff, I think it's best left. The only thing, which I guess if you're ready to move on, we can kind of go into our next section.
Oh yeah, the Star Wars gaming.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would add on to this is just because I've already got it written down. Phase 3 would have started with Vector Prime and gone through the whole Yuuzhan Vong War.
That would have been epic.
Phase 4 would have been the Darkness trilogy, the Legacy of the Force things.
That would have been really good.
And it would have also worked really well because you would have introduced Jason in Phase 2 with Young Jedi Knights.
Yeah.
So then you would have had all of Phase 3 rounding up to Phase 4 where you get him becoming Darth Cadus?
Yeah.
And because I love his storyline and the arrogance of him falling the same way Vader fell while simultaneously looking at the past, looking at Vader and being like, all right, I see how he fell. I'm not going to fall that way because I see how he fell.
Yeah.
And with him telling himself that as you watch him tip over the edge.
Yeah. It's super ironic.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you put together a pretty good game plan there. If any Disney execs are listening, I think you ought to hit Chase up.
Yeah, I've always wanted to write movies. I've tried writing a novel and been working on it 8 years. Only 10 chapters in.
Somebody give this man a job. Give him a couple $1 million to get started off with the writing, and then give him a $1 billion budget.
And I will make the greatest movie ever.
All right, so this is probably one of my favorite areas is Star Wars and gaming. So I think you picked out a few good games.
Really, I've only got one game written down here. But it's a game I play all the time. I don't know if you ever played Empire at War.
So not gonna lie, I got into it a little bit, but I was never much of a PC gamer, and so I never really took off with it.
Yeah, I wasn't until I got my laptop, and it is one that I was gonna see if I could open Steam. I can't get it to open. I think I've got nearly 1,000 hours in it now.
Nice,
but
it's respectable.
The mods on it are ridiculous. Like Thrawn's Revenge, you can play from the fall of the Empire right after Palpatine's death up to the start of the Yuuzhan Vong War, and like all the little skirmishes, like Thrawn and Warlord Zinji and all them. You can control each of their factions. You get all their ships, the Executor, the Star Destroyers.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I will say I almost, because I'm not gonna lie, I've been pretty impressed. One of my favorite games, which I think would probably be one of your favorites, is the Battlefront series.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably the most epic Star Wars game of all time, in my opinion. I don't know if you share this opinion, because I feel like you might say Knights of the Old Republic, but I think one of the greatest Star Wars games ever created was Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest losses that Star Wars or gamers who were also in that same circle as Star Wars fans lost was when the original Star Wars Battlefront 3 never came to fruition, because that that is what they've been trying to accomplish for at least the last probably better part of 8 years now.
And I honestly wonder if they set the bar too high, because they made that announcement that you were going to be able to just fight on the ground or hop on a ship and fly up on a land.
Man, I'm telling you.
And at the time, I mean, I don't know if we even have the capabilities to do it to this day.
Yeah.
We definitely didn't have it back on the PlayStation 2.
Oh my God, the amount of you would have to have one heck of a GPU and some processing power to handle something like that. I don't know. It's such a shame, because I remember I guess we were freshmen in high school or something when that game was announced, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe middle school. And I remember seeing that on the internet, and I was like, oh my God.
Because you had the stormtroopers run out, like, in the fight, and then all of a sudden the ground in front of them blows up, and you look up and you see the Star Destroyer flying overhead.
Yeah, it's such a shame. Like, that was probably one of the darkest days of my childhood, was whenever I found out that, what studio was it? Didn't they go bankrupt or something? Or they got bought out, and then it was just, they killed the project?
I think it died when, what's it called? The whole big, I think it died right near when Disney took over.
Oh, okay.
And they shut down Lucas Gaming for a little while.
Yeah, that was, oh God, what a loss. I would have loved to see a world where that game was in existence. Now, I will say that the developers that have brought us the new Star Wars Battlefront and new Star Wars Battlefront 2, I tip my caps to them, because in the years since they came out with that game, that is probably one of the longest standing games in the last 10 years, short of maybe Grand Theft Auto, that they have continuously developed and added to for their players. Because I'm pretty sure that game came out, when did the new Battlefront 2 come out? I believe it was 2016, I believe. And
sometime around there.
And I'm pretty sure at least in the last the last year. Okay, so it released in November of 2017. So from 2017 to at least 2020, I know, they constantly created new content for that game. That's 3 years. I don't know of hardly any other games that do that.
That Empire at War game I was talking about?
Oh.
They got an update this year. It came out in 2005.
Okay, you're right. That's fairly impressive.
Which, that was just, like I said, the modding community on that game is ridiculous.
Well, have you seen some of the mods on Battlefront 2?
I've seen some of them.
But still, probably...
But that's what I was impressed with this update, because the whole only thing about this update was people kept complaining about, like, I can't get this pack to work, or I'm having trouble getting these mods to work, and I'm having to go through all this. And I think it's like Patriarch, I think is the company that makes it. They'd heard all the people complaining about not being able to do this.
Yeah.
So they went in and patched their game just so the mods would run better, and then released this update. And they're like, here you go. Y'all been keeping our game alive for for 15 years. So
kudos to those guys.
So here you go. This fixes all the trouble y'all been having with your mods.
Wow, that's a pretty epic move. I respect that.
Yeah, because I mean, I've never understood the game companies that are like, no, I don't want mods on my game. Or, I don't want people changing that. Because I guess the only thing that can give you trouble is if they invent this new really cool thing to do before you do.
Yeah.
You can't really add it to your game and charge people for it.
Yeah. Well, I think the only types of games where it sucks to have modding is like competition. Like if you're talking like a Call of Duty or like an Overwatch or Apex and you have modding, that's an issue. But if you're talking about just like, if you're talking about like a maybe, well, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with RPGs, but, you know, if you have just, like for instance, like modding with Skyrim, with Empire at War, with like that's what keeps those games alive. What Skyrim is 10 years old, and people are still playing it because you can mod it and everything. I mean, it's just
my little sister has every achievement you can get in Skyrim. She has 100% of the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I would not have thought. I would not have had the motivation to 100% Skyrim.
Does she have more hours in Skyrim than you do in Empire at War?
Probably.
Awesome.
I mean, she started Skyrim when it first came out, and I think that's her number one game.
So, have you played Squadrons?
Yeah, I've got Squadrons.
What's your thoughts on Squadrons?
I love it. And I will say it has made me look at buying an Oculus.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm not dropping $100 on something because as much as I love games, I don't play on my Xbox hardly any.
Yeah.
I mainly play on my computer, and a lot of that is mainly just Empire at War, just because that's the easiest one to play.
So, I'm different. I've never I haven't taken the time, but nor do I have the patience to slowly acquire pieces to build a PC. But I recently ordered the new Xbox, so waiting for that to ship. Come on, Walmart, I need you to do me a solid. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because this may seem a little childish, but don't really care. One of my other favorite Star Wars games was the Lego Star Wars trilogy, and they keep pushing it back thanks to COVID, killer of all things good. But supposedly, I think it's Christmas of this year, they're releasing the Skywalker Saga Lego Star Wars game, and it's going to have every single movie, and I think it's going to be like a culmination of Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, Lego Star Wars 3, the Clone Wars, and Lego Star Wars Force Awakens, and then obviously probably all of the other
Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
And then probably some of the other little things, because I think whenever I played Lego Star Wars Force Awakens, they had some of the little sideshows that Disney XD had, like what was it called, the Freemaker Adventures or something?
Yeah.
Those little Lego Star Wars tales. So it's going to be a pretty expansive game, and on next gen, I feel like it's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, I've been debating on whether or not I want to invest in the new Xbox, just because, like I said, I don't have internet at my house. I run nearly everything off of a hotspot.
Yeah.
Which that means my Xbox isn't always connected.
Yeah.
So it's got to where every time I go to play, it's like, oh, you need this 24 gigabyte update that's going to take 6 hours. And then it downloads and I don't want to play, and then it takes me a while, and I get back and I'm like, oh, I want to play again. You need this update, and you got to update all your games.
That's an unfortunate thing, in the gaming world today, is every time you go to log in to play a game, there's almost certainly always some sort of update or patch that you have to download. But I will say, if you do upgrade to next gen, one of the deciding factors for me was that everything, at least on Xbox, is backwards compatible, even from original Xbox. If you're able to play it, if it's on their store, or I don't know if it's every original Xbox title or not, but a lot of that is backwards compatible. And if you have Xbox One controllers, then it'll that they still work on it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
that's another thing. My Xbox is broken somehow. It pans up, and I've switched controllers, and it still pans up. So I don't know what the problem is.
Interesting. Hey, if we have any Microsoft tech folks that have been listening to the podcast, hit Chase up.
Mm-hmm.
Might need a few pointers of how to fix that.
Yep, at the drunken rancor on Twitter.
But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I did not I was not on the Xbox train when they came out with the Kinect Star Wars. I thought that was going to be really cool, but I don't know a lot of people that hype it up, so I don't know if that ever came out to be a very, very good
I
game.
don't know.
I will say one of my friends has an Oculus, and I have played is it Vader Immortal?
Yeah, I've been wanting to play that.
And that game was pretty immersive. And spoiler alert: when you land on Mustafar, it's very immersive, and it's pretty cool. It's worth I think I don't know if you want to invest in an Oculus. It's a pretty fun game if that's the only game that you play.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I've looked at an Oculus. But as I've said before, I've got 4 aquariums in my room, and I feel like if I'm wearing a VR and flailing around, I'm gonna put my fist through a aquarium.
Bad things will happen. Well, I think that's all I have for now.
About the only other thing I was gonna ask is, have you ever played any tabletop role playing?
I have not. Sadly, that's not one of the things that I've invested my time into, but I know people who have, and they get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
I've looked into it, and I actually I DM'd a game on Discord. It's a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Which it was 100% homebrew. I essentially made up the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of fun. I had the people just play as clones during
Mm-hmm.
the Clone Wars, because then all your stats are the exact same, and I don't have to deal with making new stats for everybody.
Yeah.
And it was I copied KOTOR a lot.
Yeah.
Like, they were on terrorists. I think one of the Jedis had gotten captured, and they had to go rescue them. About the only problem I had with it was I put Ayla Secura as their acting general, and they wouldn't stop flirting with her, which was annoying because I have to play her. I play all the other characters besides them.
Deeply unfortunate.
Yeah, so that I would have something come up, and they'd be like, "Oh, I want to roll to impress the general."
Oh my!
Which the funniest thing was the very first roll they did. It's like, "Oh, I want to walk up and I want to act all cool and impress the general." Like, okay, they rolled a 1, which is a critical failure, and I'm trying to nip this in the bud to get them to stop. So I have them walk up, basically slap her on the ass, and be like, "Hey, how about we go back to my quarters?" And then she just force chunks them out, and I have her act like she hates them the rest of the game.
Perfect.
Still didn't stop them, but
yeah, I will say I've heard that the role-playing community is quite the rowdy bunch.
Yeah, I really enjoy hosting them, and in fact, I've been talking with Chandler and Chance about possibly doing a game of like a small one-shot where I've even got basically you'd be in like a scenario of rescuing Leia. Like, it's you instead of Han and Luke on the Death Star, and you got to make your way through and rescue them, or you got to go into Jabba's palace and rescue them. But instead of playing as just making a character, I've kind of drawn up here different basically characters in other fiction, like Aragorn. You'd get a lightsaber, and then you'd be able to do anything you think Aragorn could do. Or Batman, you can pull any tech you can think of out of your belt, but you have to be non-lethal on any of your things to do. I thought that would be an interesting little one-shot to run.
That is pretty cool.
We've got Harry Potter. You'd get a wooden stick, and you can use the Force, and that's all you can do.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate you having me on the show. It was pretty good to have a nice little Star Wars discussion, and hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime.
Yeah. Hopefully, I'll get you back on. All right, and I mean, as always, raise your glass and may the force be with you.